my book coming out next week, July 23rd, is called The Best Lies. It's a standalone novel, and since I started writing my own solo books again, which I took a bit of a break, this is my second of my new standalone novels. And in some ways, it's a lot like Look Closer in that it's a very twisty, um, and it's got a very enigmatic main character. In this case, I decided to write a book about a diagnosed pathological liar named Leo Balanoff, who is also an attorney. So you can go ahead and insert your joke there, pathological liar who practices law. But I learned, Jake, that probably I'm at my most effective and entertaining as a writer when I start with a really engaging character and I build the plot. And so I built up Leo, who he is what he is, what in his background has made him such a liar, and that background helps inform the plot. I started with just fully fleshing this guy out, which I found of the many different ways to write a book has become my go-to. Start with a really cool, interesting character. I pro I promise you, this guy Leo is incredibly entertaining to be around, and his other main trait, besides being a pathological liar, is he has this oversized sense of fairness, and he's willing to do just about anything to right an injustice in the law. And he tends to get in trouble when he does that. And one of those times he does that, he finds himself being stuck in the middle of an undercover FBI operation where he's got to take down a very, very bad guy. And so, he finds himself charged with murder. He has the FBI come to him and say, listen, if you want to get out of this, you're going to have to work for us and do some pretty scary things. And we kind of follow Leo through a maze of kind of scary and weird stuff. But he has a few tricks a few tools in his toolbox, I guess, and he uses all of them. It's like I said, there's a surprise every 10 chapters that will, I think, completely shift the earth on you. And that's another thing I really try to do. I try to keep these books fun. I always think of my books these days as like watching an 8 episode show that you're streaming, right? And at the end of every episode, there's a cliffhanger, a big plot twist. That's kind of how I model it. Not intentionally, but that's how my brain works these days. And so I think we're gonna see the earth shift about every 10 chapters in this book. It's a pretty fast and fun read, I hope. Sometimes you plan them ahead of time. I had a few in mind ahead of time, but some of them come to you as you write. And you say, hey, wouldn't this be cool? Now, that's not how everybody does it. And some people will outline from A to Z and stick with it. I am not one of those people. My famous co-writer, James Patterson, is one of those people. And that's one of the interesting things about when the two of us are working, that I will sometimes come up with ideas during the book that aren't in the outline, and then we'll talk about it. And he'll say, if it's really cool and interesting, let's see where it goes. When I'm writing solo, it just makes me less efficient as a writer, right? Because I'll come up with something on page 160, and I've written, however many chapters at that point, and I'll say, you know what? I've got a cool idea. I'm going to change this. And that means, of course, this, you got to go back and change the stuff that comes before it. So it's slower. I'm not as fast of a writer as I would like to be. I'd like to crank these books out every 9 months. But in addition to having a day job and having a busy family, um, I just tend to do that. And those books work for me. And I think they've been successful because of it. And so I just sort of ride that. I will plot some surprises ahead of time, and some will be organic. And sometimes those are the best ones. I usually have an idea of how the book's going to end, but I reserve the right to change my mind. And I don't always go for happy endings. I try to go for satisfying endings. My characters, maybe it's me. I don't like to write cookie cutter characters. I don't like to write characters that are all good or all bad, because that's not life. That's not how you can't relate to people like that who are perfect. And so I usually have something to cheer for in my characters and something to cheer against, which gives me some freedom when I'm writing to say, maybe this guy will end up getting caught. And you'll say, well, it's kind of a bummer, but maybe he sort of deserved it. Or not get caught. And you say, well, I generally liked him. I'm glad he didn't. Those kind of things. It's, I use the word organic. It's such the right word, though. Like these books kind of take on a life of their own as you're writing them. These characters inhabit your brain and they become real people to you. I sometimes talk to my characters and think, what would they say back to this question? How would they answer it? And as their world goes on, even though I do have a rough outline of what I'm going to do, I sort of let them drive the car. The most recent book was a collaboration with James Patterson, and it's probably like, honestly, I've lost track. It's probably my 11th with him, I think. And it's called Escape. It's the third book in the Billy Harney series, which began with the Black Book, and the Red Book was the follow-up. And we stopped coming up with colors for books and decided to just do Escape. It's kind of a wild ride about a hunt for a serial killer and a very wealthy man who is somehow involved with the serial killer who plots a very elaborate escape from prison, and then Billy has to catch him. It was one of the most fun books I think we've done together. It really starts with a bang. Um, we talked about just doing something wild, a wild chase at the beginning. And I don't do a lot of chase scenes. I certainly don't in my own novels, but we sometimes do, Jim and I, when we think it works. And this really worked out well. So yeah, we were really happy with that one. And I think that's probably coming to paperback fairly soon. Like I said, our third Billy Harney, and it was a ton of fun to write. Don't quote me on that. There will be a fourth Billy Harney. Well, that is about a very technologically savvy serial killer who has a propensity, a tremendous ability because of his tech savvy to create copycat crimes that tend to implicate people other than him. He hacks police databases, finds likely suspects, and essentially frames them while he's the one committing the crimes.